Let's use Polis to investigate the MBTA Communities Act. This law is designed to allow housing to be developed by right, overriding local zoning. The Redevelopment Board in Arlington is tasked with producing an overlay district that implements this legislation. The MBTA working group was formed to provide the Redevelopment Board with proposal on which parcels should be affected. The MBTA working group focused on 2 roads, the Mass Ave corridor through Arlington and Broadway. These are the main commercial districts in town, and the first thing that was done was remove most commercial properties from the proposal. Now this is the alternative that was provided in September that shows which parcels would be affected. They concentrated heavily in the east part of Arlington, as well as stretched out along from the center of Arlington to the Lexington town border. If we zoom in, we can see what each parcel consists of. For example, this is a apartment building. This is a church. This is a condominium building. This is an apartment building. We also have the transcripts from the various meetings. One of the first ones was back in July of this year. The raw transcripts are available by using Whisper AI. And they're 25,000 to 30,000 words. We fed that into a Retrieval Augmented Generation chat and asked questions of it to summarize the information in a more readable format. As well, we have an outline of the transcript with attribution and annotation for who spoke and what the subject matter was. We found the Q&A to be the most useful. If we go back to the beginning of the Redevelopment Board's direct involvement, we can see that there was a agenda item on the July 24th meeting for the MBTA communities. And if we go and look at the Q&A, we can see the concerns that were initially raised, what the proposals were initially, who spoke during the public comment section, summary of what each person said, and what conclusions that the board might have reached. We can see it as it evolved. They had another meeting that was tangentially on their agenda, had to do with the MBTA communities, and this is when they first gave the scope of what they believed the Redevelopment Board would propose for zoning changes to a special town meeting in October of 2023. On September 11th, the Redevelopment Board held its first public hearing where members of the public were invited to come to speak. They were given 2 minutes each to speak. We can actually look at the detail of what everyone said during that public hearing. There were 44 speakers. They were given 2 minutes each, so it's about 90 minutes worth of public input. 17 of the speakers were town meeting members, and there was about 25 people in support and 19 opposed. We look at the question and answer. You could summarize the whole meeting. We found it also useful. We could also have the slide topics introduced by the working group. But we also found it helpful to summarize the arguments both for the zoning change, which revolved around the need for more affordable housing, combating segregation, and addressing climate change. You can summarize the arguments against the zoning change. They express concern about the lack of communication, the excessive number of units, that it would developers would benefit over residents because of the construction of new high-end apartments, and the strain on local services like schools and the Department of Public Works. We also summarized what each person spoke about. There was another meeting with the Redevelopment Board on the following week where they started to write down what zoning articles were going to be presented to the town meeting and the details of each one. And during this time, members of the public were also invited to come and speak. And there were about a dozen people who spoke on each of these various articles. Finally, on October 2nd, the board met. The planning department director had made changes and revisions to the work that had been done in previous meetings. There was a list of items that were brought up for discussion. They revolved around two things primarily: the proposal of the overlay district and the conflict or the interaction with existing zoning laws, and if there was something in the overlay district that wasn't defined or regulated or restricted but was in the existing zoning, that would the existing zoning laws take precedence. That was not resolved. There's also an issue over the parking requirements, where they wanted to change it from having a unit, one parking per unit, to less than one, based on a study from 2017, which, if we look at the outline, we can see from the discussion that one board member brought up that there was a report about parking and the excess number of parking spaces for cars. This 2017 report had been discredited widely. So it allows you to go back and forth between the decisions at a high-level summary and the discussion that those decisions were based on. I also summarized the solar roof requirement and what they'd like to do in terms of that. I showed in the beginning the map from Orvis Road and the parcels that would be impacted to the Whiteford Parkway, and there was a discussion and decision that those parcels along Mass Ave would be removed. So that initial map I showed needs to be updated. And that's pretty much it. If you'd like to see more, please reach out.